I'm glad I recognize most of you guys in here. Be a nice little family reunion in here today. But for the one person that I haven't worked with directly, Anthony, welcome into Streamline. We are let me turn the music off here. We're primarily a physical therapy practice, but we also do strength and conditioning, and we have a massage therapist. And just for the exact reason why we have multiple different people talking today, that's why we have multiple different types of practitioners in here. Because if you look at all these jerseys or signatures on the wall, like there's no lack of experience in here in working with high-level athletes. And something that's true across the board is every single one of those people has a team, and it's not just the one person. And to really perform at a really high level or do something that's terribly difficult like an Ironman, you do need a team to get you across the finish line and to perform your best. So today is all about just educating you guys, little tips and tricks that you can start to implement into your training, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. I think that this is going to be an awesome thing for everyone here. I think everyone here works with Jason or Toro to some extent, so you guys are not strangers to him. But Deanna is also a licensed sports therapist. She's gonna be talking a little bit more on the mental side. And I think that that was something that I really wanted to bring in today, because it's something that I don't think anyone talks about. And when people are on the treatment table with me, it's something that I talk with them about a lot, and I'm not necessarily licensed to do that. And so I think that having someone that has the skill set, has the background to navigate getting through plateaus, having a little bit more, a different outlook or framework on how to view setbacks or struggles with training, avoiding burnout, things like that. I think that's going to be really valuable for everyone here. And everything that we talked about today is kind of all about longevity of sport. This is a sport that we have people that are in their 20s doing it, and all the way through. I have a 75-year-old right now that does Olympic distance. So this is a lifelong sport if you do it the right way. And the goal is to keep everyone happy and healthy and competing for a long time. So I'm going to start off talking a little bit about strength stuff. Jason will go with Austin, and then Deanna will finish up. We'll have some time kind of in between, little questions and stuff like that. And at the end, we're doing a raffle. Since there's not very many of you, everyone here should win something, which is great. But yeah, feel free to raise your hand if you got any questions during. If you guys need to go to the restroom, there's one right here through this door to the right. But yeah, thanks for coming. So a little bit of background on me. My background is in swimming. I swam collegiately for University of Arizona back in the day when they were a perennial top 3 to 5 team. I swam at Olympic trials, and so that's kind of how I found my way into endurance sports and working with endurance athletes. So I basically moved to Phoenix to start Streamline in 2019. It's been 6 years, and I moved here with the goal of working with swimmers and triathletes, because that's who I could kind of communicate well with and who I felt like my skill set was the best tailored to. And getting people in the water, seeing how they move, talking about programming, because it's one thing to say like your glute is weak and let's work on this, but it's another thing to say your glute is weak and this is how it translates to your run, or this is how it translates to your bike. And drawing those connections has a really big and powerful impact for an athlete, because they can start to apply it more to their training. And so I competed with Toro for a couple years. I've done a handful of 70.3s and Olympic distance and stuff like that. And then I had kids, and that kind of fell by the wayside for a little bit. My morning routine for early morning training hours kind of got interrupted, but I plan on getting back into it. I still run, but my background really is in PT and strength, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. Okay. I think everyone here knows that we should be doing some amount of strength work, and I think everyone here does do it. And our goal today is just to figure out how to do it better. Okay. Very few people do it the way that it should be done to maximize its effectiveness. And the way that we see this affecting everyone is improved efficiency in your run, improved efficiency in your bike and swim, later time to fatigue during the race. Even though we're doing heavy stuff, it translates to a long distance race, which is awesome. Better power output, so trying to catch up to someone, or quick bursts and things like that, and overall performance. It actually is going to improve your recovery as well, and we'll talk about that. Something that I think is a unique aspect of strength training is almost no one except for Anthony that I know of, has a huge weightlifting background, and doing heavy stuff in the gym builds a lot of mental fortitude for doing things that are very difficult and maybe kind of foreign to you. And I think that that's a really valuable skill set to have, and not just falling into like always doing something that's comfortable. Well, it's easier for me to go on a hour run than it is for me to spend an hour in the gym. And doing stuff that's hard or that makes you feel uncomfortable is a good thing for a sport that makes us feel uncomfortable inherently, right? How I view everyone's potential in sport is kind of 3 buckets, okay? We have our aerobic capacity, we have strength, and we have mobility and stability. And I kind of group those together because you can't have one without the other. For a lot of us, our aerobic bucket is like really maxed out. We've been doing this for years. If we want to make a 1 or 2% change there, you have to do a ton of training to make a big difference there. What people's strength and mobility, stability buckets look like, typically when they come in through my doors, is like this. The total potential or capacity of you in a sport is typically some combination of all 3 of these. So if we can fill all of our buckets up, we're going to perform better. So with strength training, we do see that we get a lot of different benefits other than just being strong. So the goal is not necessarily to gain weight, because moving a heavier thing for long distances is harder, right? But we want to improve your neuromuscular resilience, meaning your force output per pedal stroke or per stride or per swim stroke. And what strength training does is, when you're training in your endurance events, you're performing at a lower percent max compared to what you would if you were not as strong, right? That's a pretty basic concept. We're also reducing microtrauma to those endurance training events. So say no one has any strength training background, and they're functioning in an Ironman at 80% of their muscle capacity. If we can strength train and reduce that to 60% of the muscle capacity, they're probably going to get faster. And they're going to have less damage, less soreness, things like that. Strength training stimulates soft tissue adaptations. So obviously tendon, muscle, bone, ligament, things like that are going to get stronger, reduce your injury susceptibility. We also see hormonal signaling that changes with strength training compared to endurance training. So you are going to be better at removing waste, better at delivering nutrients to muscles that need to recover, and overall you're going to be better at tissue repair, because in your endurance events you're functioning at a lower percentage of your total capacity, right? And like I said, you're going to see that improved running economy, cycling economy. There's more studies done on running and cycling than there are on swimming, unfortunately for me, because that's kind of my background. But to be really good at a triathlon, we all know you need to be a phenomenal runner and a really good cyclist. Those are the 2 things that make you really good at this sport. Big takeaway from today is that integrating heavy strength, and we'll talk about that, 2 times a week during kind of a base or like an off season build, and then 1 time a week at least in season to enhance performance and recovery. These are a couple studies that I pulled and that I kind of reference with clients on the table when we talk about strength. A big thing that I want to kind of highlight is, if you look, I know this might be difficult to read, but all of these are done with people who are currently high-level athletes, so they're already training. And like I said before, it's easy to make changes with people that are new to the sport, because that just happens like every race. Every time that you do something, you're getting better at it. But people that already have that high aerobic capacity, making changes can be pretty hard. So what they did was looked at strength versus more endurance volume, and they basically just time matched them. And what that means is, instead of doing 2 hours of aerobic work, they did 2 hours of strength work as part of their training. So if you had a 15-hour training block week, we basically said we're going to make 13 of it aerobic and 15 of it or 2 of it strength work. And what they see kind of across the board is even though you swap conditioning time or aerobic work, you don't see any change in VO2 max or aerobic capacity. And I think that's a really hard thing for endurance athletes to swallow sometimes, because it's usually the mindset of more is better, but a lot of the research shows that more is not necessarily better, and we can make those individual training efforts when you do endurance sport time more quality, because we're not getting so tired and so burnt out from doing more and more and more endurance. That's not to say that endurance training is negligible, right? That is the sport, but don't be afraid to substitute some of it for a little bit of strength. It's usually, it doesn't need to be an add-on. If we're doing 15 hours of endurance work, we don't need to add 2 more hours. And I think that that's usually a limiting factor for a lot of us in here, is it's seen as this like extra thing when it can actually just be combined into what you're already doing. We see with this top study, there was a improvement in their 5K time by 3%, increased running economy, no change in VO2 max. Second study, improved neuromuscular gains, VO2 max stayed the same, and your sprint anaerobic performance went up, obviously. Third study, we see maintained short-term endurance, no compromise to long-term endurance or VO2 max. And the last study, improved cycling economy and time to exhaustion by 17%, which is pretty huge over the course of a, if you're doing a full-length Ironman, you're on the bike for, 6+ hours, that's 17% of that. That's a lot of time. When we look at strength and injury prevention, same kind of results. Again, we see people that are currently high-level athletes, currently well-trained. Once they start to implement strength training, we see huge reduction in injuries, as well as improvements in running economy. And actually, this first study kind of highlights that the strongest effects were in trained runners, which is kind of interesting. What they did here was 2 to 3 times a week for 8 to 12 weeks. Sounds like a typical off-season for a triathlete. Lower body heavy compounds. So compound lift is squat, hinge, press, pull, and avoiding failure. And that's kind of the key there. But if you look at all these studies, they're all heavy. So when we talk about heavy, we like to think of 80% of 1 rep max. That's pretty heavy, and I guarantee that's heavier than most people in the endurance world usually go. So what I want to do to demonstrate this point, I'm just going to pick Lainey and Anthony. We are going to just, if you were going to do deadlifts at the gym, what kind of weight would you do?
Deadlift?
Yeah. Say it's a set of 8.
A set of 8 body weight.
Body weight, okay.
Yeah, I go heavy, so
Okay, like what?
a set of 8, probably like 285.
Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna test it.
Oh, no. I can't.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you though.
all good. Let's test someone else. Caroline.
We made eye contact.
Caroline, you're up. What kind of weight would you use?
Like 120.
Okay, awesome. So we have this fancy little machine here that's going to actually tell us how strong you are with a deadlift type of a pull. Okay.
This thing?
Yeah. Give me 1 sec to turn it on. Apologies if this takes a minute, but I think it's a really valuable point to demonstrate.
Deadlift is very nice.
I'll show you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. All right, so this thing measures force output in newtons. Okay, we'll do a little conversion to make it make sense in terms of pounds. But Caroline, we are going to grab this bar as if you were doing a deadlift, okay? And I'll make it a little bit shorter for you because my legs are a little bit longer. But we're basically gonna do a dead pull as hard as you can. So what that looks like for me, I'm gonna get into a good hinge position. Let's get this on the side so we don't break it. And I'm gonna pull as hard as I can. So that was 1,600 newtons for me. We'll do the math afterwards, okay? Caroline, you're up next.
Okay. Oh, Caroline.
Yeah, I just have to beat Nick.
Okay, so let's go a little bit shoulder width apart. Okay? Now, this is not a back extension. I want you to drive through your legs and pull straight up as hard as you can. Ready, go. Pull, 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 pull. Good. And relax. Beautiful. Caroline got 1,000 newtons. Okay. We are going to okay, we're going to convert that to pounds. What did you say you usually would do for a set of 8?
25.
Okay. So based on this, a max test, your max is about 225 pounds. Okay. Well, it's just a max. One rep max. Okay. So if we were shooting for 85% or 80% of that, we should be closer to 180, right? So it's not that you're doing the wrong thing, but usually it's underdosed. It'd be like taking a medication with 60% of the dosage. It's probably not going to be as effective, right? So there's a long-winded way to say, don't be afraid to push yourself. Usually the rep scheme for this stuff is no more than 6 reps, okay? And just don't be afraid of that. Obviously, we're not going to start people at 80% if you're fresh into strength training. The goal is to build you up to doing that so that we can start to be really productive with this stuff.
Can you use that for other, like squats and stuff like that, or
Yep.
strictly like a
This is just the easiest one for us to test and get like an actual number. If we were going to do a squat, I'd have to get our force plates out and load you up and kind of test, and that's a lot more complicated than this. But yes, holds true for anything. A row, squat, deadlift, a lunge, whatever you think is your max, we're trying to work in that like 80, 85% range, okay? It should be hard. And it doesn't need to be a lot. We're thinking maybe 4 sets of 4 to 6 reps, take an adequate time between, and we only need 2 to 3 compound lifts per session. So that's really not a lot. If you want to, there might be something psychological in our heads that says we have to work out in the gym for an hour. And I see that a lot. It doesn't need to be an hour. If you want to get in, get out, find 3 lifts, compound lifts, load it heavy, get out of there. That is minimum effective dose, okay? Again, with this, like I said, gradual training increases. We're not trying to just load you up at 80 or 85% right away. The key here is that we have consistent adaptation to the program. So another thing that I see a lot of athletes do is they have the same workout that they've done for the last year. They're using the same weights and they say, yeah, I strength train, but it's not actually adjusted and it's never progressed. And so always adjusting rep scheme or speed of the movement and all these different variables that we can use to elicit different stimulus to continue to increase your strength is huge. And obviously we see reduction in injury risk as well. Again, with injury prevention, strength training across, this first study is kind of across all sports, but it includes endurance athletes. Introducing strength training reduces the injury risk by 1/3 or cuts the injury risk to 1/3 and reduces overuse injuries by nearly half. Stretching by itself didn't do anything. So that's a big thing. Like, what stretch can I do for this? Probably not going to give you a stretch unless something's sensitive, and we want to reduce the sensitivity with some load at length. But a lot of people will improve their mobility as we start to do loaded strength work. If you look at Olympic weightlifters, are probably some of the most mobile people in the world, and they lift hundreds and hundreds of pounds. If you can get good at squatting all the way down here, I can guarantee your hip mobility is going to be great, okay? Stronger doses, AKA strong or heavier lifts, yielded larger risk reductions in injury. Again, minimum effective dose during kind of the off season or a build phase, we're looking for 2 sessions per week, 3 to 4 sets at 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max. During the season, it's just kind of maintenance, okay? And the triathlon season is long. Some people are racing in March and then they have another race in November. So there's usually some kind of a cyclical pattern based on your training, and that's why I think it's important for us to have a good communication with coaches, because everyone needs to be on the same page. But we're doing that once a week. Injury prevention, just kind of as a general standard, at 1 session per week, maybe a little bit more. And the thing that I want to highlight here is your recommended endurance to strength ratio in terms of hours. 6 to 9, so call it, let's say 10 hours of endurance work to 3 hours of strength. That's pretty big in an off season. I think that might even be a little egregious, okay? But if you were training 12 hours, I think having 2 hours of that be strength is totally fine, and you will not see a reduction in your aerobic capacity with that. Obviously, we're building long-term resilience in tissues, bones, things like that, so that we can continue to train and race at a high level for a really long time. And something that I see too much of is people come in and just blame injuries on being old, and usually it's because they're just not strong enough, or they've done something for so long now without that strength, and now those overuse injuries start to kind of kick in. That's not to say that strength training is going to totally cure you and you're not going to have any injuries, but it is the best way that we have to mitigate that risk by far. Something that we do here at Streamline, and I've kind of tweaked it over the last several months, but we do have remote coaching options for people. And majority of the people that I work with through this are triathletes. And we do weekly check-ins. We obviously have the accountability factor, which I think is huge. On a personal level, after having kids, I gained like probably 20, 30 pounds. And I was like, I know how to work out. I'll get back in shape. And it just never happened. And I ended up having to pay for a coach to just say, get your shit together. And, this is what we're going to do. If you didn't do it, why didn't you do it? And someone holding me accountable has really helped. And I've lost 30 pounds since May. And I fully believe in having a coach. It's the reason that all of you have Jason as a coach. There's something powerful in having someone that can kind of hold you to what you say you're going to do. And that's part of the reason why I think having a coach for strength is huge for triathletes, because a lot of times it's an afterthought, and it's something that triathletes kind of throw by the wayside. I'll do it, but if you don't do it, I'm going to ask you why you didn't do it, and make sure that we remove all those barriers to allow you to be successful in this, so you can maximize what you're doing. Like I said, weekly check-ins, programming designed around your race schedule and tailored to your skill level. Obviously, both Anthony's here like to lift heavy. That's great. They're going to start out at a different place than where Laney might, right? This is a slight plug for us, but something that I'm trying to do is actively grow our, population of triathletes that we work with. And so as a bonus today, anyone here, normally this is $400 a month, but today we're going to knock, everyone here is going to have option for first month free, and it's going to be $299 for the remainder of the time that you're on the membership, as long as that's a 6-month commitment. And guess what? October, November, December, January, February, March, that's an off season. Okay. If you really want to try to boost your level for next season, I think this is a really valuable opportunity. Check your guys' inboxes later this week for details on that. If you're interested or you want to have a conversation about it, we can certainly talk about it. Okay. I know I just threw a lot at you. Does anyone have any questions, insights? Do you agree, disagree? A lot of head nods. Cool.
In agreement.
Would the mobility piece obviously be part of the strength session?
Yeah. So typically how we structure workouts will be some amount of like activation, mobility work beforehand that's going to complement whatever the compound lifts are that you're going to do that day. So if we're doing some hinge work, we're definitely going to be doing things to work on hamstring elongation, activating your core, spinal extensors, things like that, to allow you to maximize what you're doing in RDLs or deadlifts. In terms of mobility work, like I said, we don't need to spend a ton of time just stretching. If you're spending 30 minutes every day stretching, you're probably not going to see a lot of benefit. I think stretching has some utility, but it's usually to reduce your sensitivity to positions. So, some people will get like actual impingement with a deep squat. So there's a lot of ways that we can mitigate that during your workouts, lowering or raising the height of the bench or whatever that you're squatting to, adjusting foot position, obviously adjusting load or even where the weight is, whether it be a front squat or a back squat, high bar, low bar, a lot of different things like that. And then working on general hip mobility is good too, but usually it's loaded. So we're taking a kettlebell and finding a position that doesn't hurt so that we can find those deep ranges of motion and allow your body to become comfortable there. But typically, yes, activation, mobility, we go into the workout. If you say, I only want them to be 30 minutes, awesome. We can make that happen. If you're like, I really like strength training and I want to get a lot out of it, we can pick 4 compound lifts and some plyometric work and really make you a really robust program. So, cool. All right, if there's no questions, we'll jump into the next guys.